All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome. You are now sitting with me in Rainbow Bay, um, Utah. And as you can see, I'm next to a lodge grabbing some internet, but I'm hoping it's good. I think it's been good. I recorded a video early this morning for you guys so that you can return back to the video and practice a little bit about what we're going to do today. So it's rendering right now. It takes it usually about an hour to render a video that's about 20 minutes. And this video is about 20 minutes. So you'll get a chance to get some more practice on it if you want to return to it, because it always feels like class moves kind of quickly and it requires a lot of me talking. And, if we were face to face, I think it would definitely lend itself to activities, which is what I've done for the last 10 years or so. So this is my first time trying to do them online. We'll see how it goes. All right. So what you see right now is a part of the PowerPoint that we've been working on since the last time I talked to you, which is the kind of giant IRI PowerPoint. Now, I do want to remind you, and you're going to hear me say this over and over again like a broken record, an IRI is not just one document. So even though we're working in Jennings right now, primarily, as an IRI, he calls it an IRI, you should know that an inventory contains more than one thing. So an IRI, an informal reading inventory, is one thing that would be included in an IRI. So I said that right. An IRI contains an IRI. But think of it as a portfolio assessment. Never, ever should you look at a kid based on one test. You should not make decisions for a kid based on one test. Just like you wouldn't want us to make decisions about you based on one test on one day, you definitely don't want to do that for 7 or 8-year-old kids. All right, they make big decisions about themselves. They come up with rules that govern themselves that are often just degrading to their self-efficacy. All right, so last time we were together, I'm going to do a little rehash with you. Last time we were together, we were working on this first part of Jennings, all right? So in the big packet, it's like a 72-page packet if you were to print it. In that packet, which I'm giving to you, you have it online, save it on a jump drive. That packet has a whole bunch of charts and beginning papers and descriptions and all these things. You can skip through that. And the first part you're going to want to get to is the guided word list, just for you to see it, what it looks like beforehand, knowing that as you get to this next week, you're going to be working with actual data. So I'm going to be giving you the data already filled out, most of it. You're going to have to be able to read the data. We call it disaggregating data. So if you're a reading scientist, which you guys are, if you're a reading scientist, you disaggregate data, which basically just means you read it. Sort of like we call teachers, but we also call them pedagogues or pedagogy. This is what we talk about in reading science as disaggregating data, coming up with what we find to be true based on the data that we have. All right, so last time we were together, we went through these word lists and we said, hey, we would normally, if we were giving this to a child, we would start 2 grade levels below where you think the kid is. So if a kid is a 3rd grader, but you know they're a struggling reader, in the minimum, we would start about 1st grade. So we would definitely start at least then. If you knew about the kid a little bit more and you thought, oh, I don't know, 1st grade might even be hard, you would start down at kinder, K, or pre-K, all right? Now, remember, these aren't just exactly tied to grades because a pre-kinder kid would not be reading. We're assessing reading, not just decoding. You assessed decoding when you did the QPS. This is assessing active reading, which means in a regular semester, you would be asked to work with a child that's already a reader. So they don't have to be a great reader. It doesn't have to have a label. It doesn't matter. It's just a typical reader, a slow reader, any kiddo. We would be as long as they're reading. So they're moving past just decoding, sounding out words, working through strategies with words. And they're reading even if they have some mistakes, all right? Even if it's below grade level. So a pre-K kid would not be reading yet, so we can't say that these are just grade equivalent because a pre-K kid is just barely learning letters, okay? All right, so we said with this that the kid would read the entire list. And I said, be really careful because this oral right here and this silent right here does not mean that the kid is silent. Instead, it means that this is where this word is found in the passage. So this is a list of words, yes, but each one of these words from play all the way down to the is found in a passage that we're going to have the kids read, and we're going to get to that today. So some kids will do really well when they just have a list. So just reading through the list, the kid does pretty well reading out those words. But then when you put those same words in a passage, in a piece of text, they miss them. Especially our dyslexic kids, quite often, will do awful on a word list because they have no context to help them figure it out. Because remember, dyslexia is a high intelligence disability. So they're very clear on figuring out words and rules, and they try really hard. But it ends up being that they can't memorize everything. So you end up quite often with dyslexic kids who don't do well on a word list like this. They're reading all 20 words, but will do a little bit better on a passage. All right, so these words here from play to is going to be found inside of the oral passage, which means the kid would read it out loud orally at the pre-primer level. So if I go to the pre-primer oral passage, I'm going to find play with they inside of that passage. If I go to the silent passage, where the kid would be reading silently, these words will be inside of that passage, pet, all the way to the. These would be found in the pre-primer level of the silent passage. And we're going to look at that in just a minute, okay? Now, somebody asked me at the end of last class when I talked to you guys about this side of the piece right here. So this side right here. And what I told you was, we'll talk about that later. All right, so now's the time. We're talking about it later. So what you would do when giving this exam with this assessment, you would have the kids read the list all the way down. If they're reading it in good time, just means that they are sort of actively working at the words without stopping, without hesitating much. You would give them a timed presentation, and you would say, yes, the kid got it. And we said that you would make little checks. If the kid starts to work on the word, even if they get it right, don't worry, they're going to get credit for it. But if they start to work on the word, like let's say they sound it out, you're going to tell me that they sounded it out, but they got it correct. Now, it went over here on the untimed because the kid worked on the word. All that untimed means, and a reminder, all that untimed means is that the kid worked on it. You want kids working on it. This is not a bad thing. It's okay. They still get it correct if they get the word. So just make sure you tell me that the kid sounded it out, or if the kid got the word wrong, like let's say the kid said it relatively quickly, didn't work on it at all, but what the kid said, instead of they, the kid said them. So I would say no, and I would write the word them. Okay? So that's how this worked. Now remember, they go all the way down. So this part over here is what I want to talk about now, because we're just about to move into miscue analysis, which some of you might have done before, especially if you are in our bilingual program. You might have seen a little bit of this. All right. So over here, this is where we're looking at these particular words: play, with, they, pet, home, all of these. We're looking at all these words to see, did the kid, when reading it in the passage, get the word right? So if I go to the pre-primer passage, I'm going to find the word play, and in that passage, it'll be underlined, sort of bolded actually. So it's bolded in the passage, and then I would say, did the kid get the word play when they read it in the passage? If they did, I would give it a plus. If they missed the word in the passage, so say the kid, instead of they, when I went to the pre-primer passage and the kid was reading the story out loud to me, he still said them. I would say, no, he didn't get it in the passage either. Okay? So, down here, that's big, bold, blacked out. You should ask, well, why? Why is it blacked out there? Can anybody write in their chat room why you think this might be blacked out over here? I'm going through and I'm putting pluses. Yes, they got it in the passage. Or minus, no, they didn't. Why is this blacked out? Come on, chat room people. Yes. Jessica, yes. Yes. Gabriel, yes. Maria, yes. Cindy, thank you, thank you. Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. Tell you what, like, sometimes in the long semester when I'm in front of people, they don't even get that. So kudos to you. Okay, yeah, they're reading it silently. You don't know what's going on in their head. So how would you know if they got the word? I mean, they're reading the word pet silently. So obviously you don't know. And if you ask a kid, what are they going to tell you? Yeah, I knew that word. Yeah, I got that word right. So that's why they're blacked out. That's why you don't get any over here. All right. So are there any questions on this here? Remembering down here, just a really quick reminder, you're looking for the number correct. So when you're counting up these check marks, you're looking for the ones that they got correct. So when I give you data, which you have the data stuff coming, the data is going to ask you to do this bottom part. I'll give you this, but you're going to have to do this. Remember, you're looking for the number correct. And that's true on the untimed as well. So I'm still looking for the number of checks I have over here on all of these, all right, all the way down. So I'm looking for the number correct. It doesn't count against them if they get it right. Okay? Y'all have any questions about this as I move on? Yes, exactly, Stephanie. On the case study, I'm going to give them to you, and you're going to have to calculate the numbers down at the bottom. So you just have to know how to read it. Yep. Christella, that's absolutely right. The total is what you're looking for. So you're going to get the timed. Say there were 20 words that the kid got correct. So you'd say 20 times 4, that's 80. Ooh, I'm not very good at making 8s. All right, that's 80. And then down here, let's say he had 4 correct on this one. He had 4 that he worked on and got. That's 16. And then down at the bottom, that would mean it's a 96. And what you should be able to tell me is, hey, 96, is that independent, instructional, or frustrational? Yep. Maria's on it. Erica's on it. Yes, thank you. Yes. All right, so you would write 96, and if you were going to be awesomely cool because you attended class, you would say independent. All right. There was a question a little bit back on the chat about, are you going to have to do new in context? You're going to figure this out? Yes. I'm going to give you the oral passages, which we're just about to do, and you'll flip to the one that matches this up here. So you're going to be looking for pre-primer oral passage. So pre-primer oral passage, okay? So you'll go to the pre-primer oral passage. I'm going to show you in just a second, and you'll see, did the kid get the word play, like, in, good, right? And you'll put the little pluses and minuses. No, not all the passages have the data. And if they don't have the data, then you don't have to worry about it. So Stephanie says about independent is 98%, instructional is 97 and 91. Check back on your slides. I'd like you to use a little bit more of a larger window for independent. So independent is going to be somewhere around 95 to 100. Instructional is 91 to 94, 95, somewhere around there. You can fudge a little bit with instructional, but your frustration is always 90 and below, just like you said. Yes. Okay, so that's what you need to be able to read. Even if you're not doing it all for the case study, you need to be able to read it, because on the exam, I'm going to give you it all filled out, and you need to be able to tell me something about the kid. I want you to be able to look here and say, oh, well, this kid does a lot of sounding out, because we'd have a lot. Or that you would say, this kid knows words in the passage or doesn't know words in the passage. This kid reads everything quickly. Or this kid always is working on the words. That helps us to know things about the child. So those are what we call assertions. What is it that you see that you can prove through the data that the kid is doing? So if you see a whole bunch of correct, you can say the child is actually at an independent level at their grade level because they have a 96% at pre-primer and they're a kindergartner, whatever, pre-primer. Okay, so you just need to be able to make some assertions. Uh-oh. No, go away. Okay. All right, so moving on. So here we go. Get back into current slide. Just a reminder, you want to make sure that you are always looking for independent, instructional, and frustrational. And if you watch the other video that I did earlier in a minute, you'll hear me harp on this a lot. For us, for every test you take in this class, frustrational is below 90%. Independent is somewhere between 95 and 100. Instructional is somewhere in the middle. Okay? Your job as a teacher is to sit with instructional most of the time. and to keep kids away from frustration so that you're there to actually support and facilitate. That's your role. If children sit in frustration too long, what ends up happening is they don't like reading. So if you have a kid who comes in and says, I don't like reading, you've got a big uphill battle, especially when they're only 7. Now, I'll also tell you the great thing about them being young and that they're still in elementary school for the most part, you just need to find a genre that they like. When you find something that's highly motivating for them, they want to read it. So if it's fighter planes or animals or deep sea fish, you find something that's interesting for them to read, even if it's a little bit too hard, and you make sure you stand in there and facilitate with them, you're good to go. Yeah, so Stephanie says these levels are a little bit different than the book. Yeah, you're going to go with me. Okay, that's one of the reasons I'm going to say it over and over again. Go with me. I know they're a little bit different, and you'll also see them very different out in the schools. If you're using Fountas and Pinnell, or you're using Reading Recovery, some of those methodologies are using 70% for passing, or our STAR test uses 80% for passing. And what I'll tell you is that's great. That's okay for them to use for passing a test. Remember, this isn't a test. What we're trying to do is to see how are they doing at decoding and meaning making. The most important part of reading is the comprehension. So in order to comprehend, I can't have kids missing a lot of words. If a child is missing 1 word out of every 10 words, that's a lot. That's what brings them to frustration. So imagine a sentence that has 10 words, and every single time you come to a new sentence, there's a word. This is especially important for those of you that will end up teaching math or social studies or science, whether you are doing a class where you're teaching science and reading or social studies and reading. When you get into those content areas, guys, there's a ton of content vocabulary. So you know as a reading scientist that those are the words that the kids are going to struggle with the most. And so when you're teaching that text, you want to preview the words, right? Teach them what the words mean, like climate change. You might give them that word, which is a tier 3 word, meaning we're only going to see it in one area, like science. So we teach them those words beforehand to help them as they're reading not break down immediately. In our language arts classes, we try to do that as well. However, I would say previewing text is not as important as being there when the text gets hard. So a kid can miss a word here and there, no problem. But if a kid starts to miss 1 word out of every 10 words they read, comprehension breaks down so much that you can't expect them to understand very much. So that's why we use the 90%, all right? Hey, that's a really good short answer question. I might ask you that on the test. I think I might. I'm going to write that down. That's a pretty good test. Why do we use 90% as our goalpost or as our numerical data for what's frustration? And what you should be able to say is, hey, if kids missing more than 1 out of every 10 words, we have a problem. They're obviously going to be struggling with meaning making, which the point of reading is not decoding. That's the first step. The point of reading is meaning making, comprehension. All right, so what we're looking for in our IRI are these things. We're going to be looking for reading levels, which is what we're going to do today. We're also going to talk a little bit about vocabulary and comprehension, because of course that's our goal. And then, of course, we're also going to get some information about their decoding development, which you've gotten some information already on the QPS, right? So that's the first sort of part of our assessment, our portfolio assessment. It was the QPS. So now we're going to move into what does it look like in real reading, okay? All right, there's your chart somewhere again. Tattoo it, have it next to you. I guarantee you, you're going to see it a bunch, all right? All right, so here's what's going to happen. You would give them the guided word list, the GWL, have them read the whole list. Then you would find out where they were independent, where they were instructional, and where they were frustrational. You would then take where they were independent, and you would go down or make it easier 2 levels. That's because we want kids to be successful. So you want to make sure that whatever you give them is easy for them to do. If they have to work too hard on it, you should move down. Okay, so if I say, okay, well, this kid, Jenny, she's a 3rd grader. And let's say you don't know anything about Jenny. You don't know, but she's a 3rd grader. You would, in the minimum, start at 1st grade. Now, Jenny hopefully is going to be really good at 1st grade, and that's going to give you her independent level. It's much easier if you go easy and can get an independent level, and then you work your way up systematically until it gets so hard that the kid is missing a bunch, all right? Once the kid starts missing a bunch, we'll talk about what a bunch is in just a minute. Once you notice a kid is missing a bunch or struggling really hard, you stop. Okay, because that means they're probably at frustration, and you just stop. The PowerPoint, Bev, is back in Module 4. I think it's in Module 4. Okay, moving on. So that's what this is saying here. You're going to estimate the independent level. You gave the word list. You estimate it by going down, making it easier. Then you're going to go and find that passage. So with Jenny, who is the third grader, we would go to first grade, 2 levels down, making it easier. And then I would find the oral reading, which is our next one, oral reading passage called the ORP, O-R-P, ORPS, oral reading passages. And we would go to first grade. That would be the one that you would see. Okay? You would give her that one. If as she was reading it, there were tons of mistakes, you keep going. Then you're going to ask her questions. And that's where we get to the rub, okay, the comprehension questions. She can have a million miscues in there, a bunch of different little mistakes. But as she answers the questions, that's where we're going to find out if those mistakes impacted her reading. So we're looking to see, did the mistakes that she made while she was reading impact her comprehension? If they did, we need to make sure that we go back and work on some of those word work pieces. Okay, some of the decoding and some of the pieces of phonics, depending on what the kid needs. But remember, when we went down to first grade, our goal is that it was easy for her, that we found her independent level. Then we would get harder, hopefully finding her instructional level, and then we would get harder and hopefully find her frustrational level. Once you find her frustrational level, in the questions, when you ask her the question, she goes, I don't know. Can I look back? And you say, no, I'm interested in, can you remember? That's different than the STAR test, by the way. The STAR test, they go back, they do all the strategy stuff, they can read it as many times as they want to. Here, they read it out loud, and then you ask the questions. This is not a search and retrieve activity, meaning that I don't want them to go find an answer. That's a skill, and it's a skill they need for the STAR test. Here, I'm wanting to see, what do they recall, what did they comprehend and can recall? Okay, so that means they can't look back at the paper. And you can tell them that. Just once you read it, just know I'm going to ask you some questions, and then we'll move on. And if the kid says, well, can I look back? Say, oh, not this time. It's a little bit different. I want you to remember it, okay? So read as slow as you want to, but just make sure that you're remembering stuff. And if you want to take some notes, you can do that too. Okay, totally open like that. All right. So here's the rub. Here's the big stuff for today. And like I said, there's an additional video that you can go back to do this particular part. So what I'm going to be giving you and what I'm going to ask you to read to disaggregate is a running record. A running record is a record or a ledger or an agenda of all of the miscues or mistakes that a kid has made while reading. Now, it doesn't matter what passage they made these on. It doesn't matter where they made these on when reading with you. If they made an error, you write it down. Now, I'm going to try to be as clear as I can, like clear as my coffee. It's not very clear, but I'm going to try. So a running record is keeping track of all of the miscues that a kid makes. As a reading scientist, we call it a miscue because a miscue tells us what's happening inside of the kid's head, that there's a miscuing inside of their lexical understanding that's then making them say something. So it's a little bit different than just a mistake. We are grabbing a mistake, and when we see the mistake, we're making sure we mark it down. But when we go back and we look at that mistake, we're then looking at the mistake like a miscue. So a miscue gives us a window into what's happening inside of the kid's head. So that might sound like kind of silly, like of course their mistakes tell us what's happening inside of their head. But it wasn't until the 1970s that Ken and Yetta Goodman even posited that things were going on inside of the kid's head. We used to have a very historical idea of kids before that as tabula rasa, blank slates, that when they came to us, we could shape and mold them into anything we wanted them to be. As a social cognitive scientist now, you should say, well, yes, but there's a lot more influence in the world. They are living beings. So it's not just about reading the word, but it's also about reading the world. So kids learn from their world and their environment. They don't come to us as a blank slate. Sometimes we wish they did, but they don't. So we have to sort of fit into the refiguring of what's happening inside of their heads. There's always something happening. Every behavior, every pen mark, everything they say, there's a reason. That's why those of you that will teach pre-K, K1, even into maybe second grade, I think the world of you, because children's language is their oral language, their speaking words, their vocabulary is much smaller than what they need in order to be able to share with you what's happening. So when they get upset, they hit or they bite or they shove or they lick, or there's all these physical behaviors. And when you ask the kid why, they don't have the words to describe why, and you get to figure it out. That in some ways is also a running record. You're going to keep track of the biters and the kickers and the lickers. And that keeps track of the things that they're doing that give you a window into why. So for us as reading people, reading scientists, you're going to call those mistakes miscues. You're going to say that something's miscuing in their brain. So a kid that says the word noodle for the word poodle is telling you something, right? So first of all, it might be telling you that the onset, the first consonant sound, they're missing. They didn't read it. They didn't see it. They didn't sound it out. But they did the entire chunk, the rhyme of the word, the second part of the word, they got it. So how do we get a kid to pay attention at the beginning? Is this a pattern? Maybe they don't know what a poodle is, but they definitely know what a noodle is. So noodle came first because they don't know what a poodle is. That's what we're trying to start with. So that's a miscue. Keeping up with all the miscues makes a running record. So as you're writing on your paper all the miscues, what the kid's doing, what they're saying, what they're missing, what they got right, as you're keeping up with all of that, that then becomes a running record. All right, so here are the markings, the scientific markings that we would use to show errors that the kid makes that we now call miscues. So as the kid is reading the passage, the paragraph, you are marking down the mistakes, the miscues that the kid makes. Now, I'll tell you, when I first started doing this, and now I've done thousands of them, but when I first started doing this, I recorded all the time. I recorded the kids doing the reading because by the time a kid gets to about second grade or so, they're reading relatively quickly for the marks that you need to be able to make on the page. It allowed me to pay attention to two things that are happening with the kid. One is the words that the kid is saying, the spoken reading. The second thing is the physical manifestation of the reading. So a kid who is tapping their pencil or twirling their hair or gritting their teeth as they talk or bumping their leg up and down. And so when I was sitting with the kid, I wasn't always making the marks on the page. If I was doing an assessment with it, I would record them and then I would do it later. All right? Now remember, when you're working with a kid, this is not secret data. You're welcome to share it with the kids, show them what you're doing, tell them what they're doing. Especially when you first start, you should be upfront with the kids and say, I'm learning how to do this, so you're going to help me. I'm hoping you can give me a shot at this. Okay? All right, let's talk about the main ones. I don't need you to know all of these. Even as a reading scientist, as a reading specialist, I've never used all of these to describe. The ones that I want you to make sure that you know are these first ones in specific. So the first one would be let me get my pen here. Okay, so the first one would be a substitution. This is one that as the kid is doing it, or as we finish the analysis, as we finish the record, we would go back and we would mark as a number, a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So I would first say, okay, the kid substituted, which means that the kid put a different word in for the word in the text. So the text word was where, and the kid said there. So you'll notice with the substitution, all that I did was write the word on top. Sometimes I'll draw a line between the two, but a word on top. So they substituted a different word. Now this here is really close. Notice, again, the kid's just missing the beginning. All right? So that's the sort of patterns we're looking for. So a substitution. The second one that we would count is an omission. An omission means that they left the word out. Now sometimes they'll leave the word out and it didn't really change the meaning of the sentence. Don't worry, they're going to get some credit for that. But you're still going to count it if they leave something out. If they skip a word or they just omit it altogether, or if they start it. Okay, so here you see a little circle around the word. I've seen that done a whole lot. For me, I just put an X over the word. I've seen it where it just draws a line through the word. Okay, so it might just go like this, telling me, nope, the kid did not say that word. So this means to me, as a reading specialist, that the kid read, he worked home. Okay. The third type is an insertion. An insertion is just like in when you're revising during workshop method or something like that. You use a caret and you just add in what the kid has said. So in this example here, the kid added an S on the end of the word to hear the sounds better. Okay? You can have it where they insert a whole word. So they say, to hear the pretty, I should have picked a smaller word here, to hear the pretty sound better. All right, so if they insert a whole word. Now, you'd think this doesn't happen that much, but the truth is it actually does. Often kids will stick in words that still make sense in the sentence, but are still counted as insertions, okay? So they'll say, the sentence before might have read, the black dog ate the bone, he was happy, and the kid said, the black dog was happy, right? So they're inserting all these words in there. Now, it still makes sense. It's still the black dog, but they inserted it. That usually tells you when they're using an insertion that makes sense, it's telling you that they are comprehending. All right, so we're going to count it against them, but you as a teacher are going, yeah, but they're inserting a word that makes sense, so it makes sense. Substitutions can also do that, where a lot of times a kid will substitute the word the for the word so the cat instead of saying a cat, right? So he substituted, but in the English language for us here in the U.S., it doesn't make any difference. The cat and a cat are actually so close together that it wouldn't really impact morphologically the meaning of the sentence. All right, so those are the three big countable errors. So you'll see down here, these are the ones you're going to count up. All right, then we have errors that we want to make sure we mark down. We will have these miscues, and we want to make sure we mark them down, but they don't count against the kid. They just tell us about the kid. So the next one is repetitions, meaning that the kid repeats. Now, when they repeat, they're not correcting anything. They just repeat it. If they're doing this just a couple times, it often tells us that they're comprehending and can sound something like, the chimney by the rope. Oh, the chimney by the rope. And so they repeat it, but you can almost tell that they were repeating it to help their comprehension. And I delineate that by an R. I try to do some sort of a line underneath it that tells me the part that the kid repeated, if they repeated the whole sentence, if they repeated just the word. But remember, they didn't say the word wrong to begin with. They said it correctly, but they went back to repeat. All right. The next one that I want you to pay attention to is correcting, sometimes called a self-correct or an SC. Uh-oh. Somebody needs to mute. I thought I had it all muted. Hold on. Okay, so self-correction. So here what this means is that the kid read, and as they read the word, they get to another word, another part of the sentence, and they go back and they fix it. So this here has a C or an SC. I often do an SC nowadays. I used to just do a C. So a little self-correct, and that tells me that the kid, when reading blood feeds, the first time read blood feels, and that initially would have been a substitution of the word feels for feeds. But as the kid got to the next sentence or next few words, he went back and he said, oh, blood feeds, and kept going. So he fixed it. Once the kid fixes it, they get credit. If you fix it, I don't care how many times you have to do it, we're gonna go from there. That's something you guys should learn for yourselves too. Like asking for the opportunity to fix something, to learn from your mistakes, is a really high-level skill. Taking critical feedback and then asking to try it again is something that I would love to promote with all of you. I think it's a really important thing that as adults we get away from. We often think critical feedback is there to hurt us, and really it's there to help us learn. So asking yourself, what do I have to learn from this? And then coming to the professor with what questions you have and saying, hey, this is kind of what I would like to try again, and I think I've got it now. That's learning. I want all you guys to do that. Okay, so moving on. These here, I don't use any of these actually. I think that they get very specific, and if I'm working with a kid who needs that specificity, I might come back to something like this. The next one isn't until down here, and that's dialect. You're going to hear dialect in just a minute with my daughter a long time ago. She has a dialect. Dialect can be used also to indicate some sort of a cultural norm, a language norm that would be a little bit different than our academic English, which is often what we're promoting in our schools. But you as a teacher are saying, no, we don't want to promote that. We want to promote all languages. This allows us to know something about the kid. So if as you're reading, you hear a kid who you can tell their first language is Spanish, the one you're going to listen to here, she is definitely from the South. So dog, for example, is something you're going to hear. God Dogs by Catherine Stewart. And you're going to be able to hear the way that my family talks at home. That would be indicated just by a D. And you'll just circle the D. Some people will put it on the actual words that they say. So if the word was dog and the kid said dog, okay, hear the difference? Dog, dog. One is literally like D-A-W-G, dog. And then the word that's written is dog. They mean the same thing. She's correct on the word, but her dialect makes it sound different. It's going to tell you something about her spelling probably in her head too. Her spelling is going to align with how it sounds coming out of her mouth, how it sounds in her head. But we would just indicate that. Usually I do it at the top of the paper, and I'll write D. Sometimes I'll write Southern dialect. I'll write ELL Spanish, ELL Togo. If I can hear that there's an accent going on, I consider that a dialect. They are a little different, but I'm going to consider that a dialect, and I'm going to put a D at the top, letting me know that the language that the kid has as an L1 might be impacting the way that their L2 is coming out. For almost all of our kids in the South, not all kids, but a lot of our kids, academic English is an L2, their second language. Learning how to write in academic English is not the way we speak, especially here in the South. We don't speak like this. So as a result, we know academic English and we know spoken English. And those are actually two different ways that we use language. So if you have a kiddo who is a first language L1 Spanish speaker, they will do things with their words that are in alignment with how words work in Spanish, right? So things like they will leave endings off of words. Well, because in Spanish, the different tenses go before, not necessarily after, and we're putting them after, like an ED on the end or a TION. So they'll miss some of those things because they're still translating in their head. It lets us know. The first way that language always works is a translation. So I read the English, I translate it into Spanish, and then I try to spit it back out in English. That's why it takes so long for them to learn to read. And it's an amazing power that they have when you're learning another language. All right, the next one I want you to pay attention to is pauses. Now, this cute little curly Q, that's all great, but what I like to do is just dots. So as the kid is thinking about the word, I just start putting a few dots on top of the word. Doesn't tell me anything really, except when the kid starts to do a particular strategy like sounding out. So if a kid starts to sound out, remember, my goal is to write down what the kid is doing. So if the kid starts sounding out, husband, I'm going to put a little sound out next to it. It doesn't matter how long the kid works on the word, because if they get it right, they get it. Just keep up with the strategies. All right. So these are the ones that I want you to know. I want you to know these 4 that are in purple. They don't count against the kid. They don't hurt the kid. And I want you to know these 3 up here are ones that you would count against the kid. So if you're saying, how many miscues did this kid have? You would go, well, how many substitutions? Say 5. How many omissions? Let's say 3. How many insertions? Let's say 1. All right. So with that being said, you would say that this kid had 9 errors on the passage, however many, right? 9 errors. And I would see each of these errors marked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay, throughout the passage. The other thing you can tell me after doing that is, hey, the kid is substituting more than they're doing anything else. That's a simple theoretical assertion. You can literally say to me, if I said, Seth, tell me one thing about this data. All I did was I gave you this data right here. You get a little Post-it note and it says this about the kid. This right here. It says the kid had 5 substitutions, 3 omissions, and 1 insertion. You would say, well, things that I can say about this kid is they had 9 total miscues. They substitute more than they do anything else. Those 2 things you can tell me, and it's based on the data. Okay? You're not making it up. It's based on the data. All right. So now the next thing is I got to interpret these things. I got to figure out what they mean. And that's where it starts to be a little bit hairy. But I'm going to show you the way that I did it as a teacher. I'm going to show you how I use it even now as a diagnostician. I think it's very helpful for me to sort of disaggregate data clearly. So we're going to look at that in just a second. But in order to do it, we're going to try one out. All right, so here's where you need to grab your Guide Dogs by Catherine Stewart and get that in front of you. And close this out. And I'm going to bring up Maddie reading for everybody. All right, so you have the text in front of you. Now, the better you get at this, the more you're not going to need the text. You could just be putting little check marks on a piece of notebook paper as the kid is reading, and then marking down when the kid made an error. So remember, the goal in listening to her is to mark down things that you see her doing or hear her doing. I like to record because I like to listen to it twice, right? The first time when I'm with the kid, I look at all their physical things. The second time I do it, then I'm going to be probably at home, but I'm going to be marking down all of the miscues. For right now, if you'll just kind of watch the video with me, and then I'm going to ask you to unmute and share a little bit with me about what you noticed with Maddie reading. But we're going to look together first. Okay, we're going to look at first some physical signs, physical things that she's doing. All right, so let's get ready. You do not have to have your pen, and you do not have to be marking anything down, although you can be writing some anecdotal notes if you want to, like things you notice, all right? But I'm going to be moving through the video sort of quickly, and then I'd like for you to take your speaker off and then share what you noticed with her. All right, so here we go.
Chapter 1, What are guide dogs? Guide dogs are special dogs that can...
All right, let's go back. Watch her. Just physically watch her face. All right, what'd you see? Somebody?
She stuck her tongue out.
Yeah. Okay, this is like, it's like a total thing for me because as a teacher who mostly works with older kids who can't read or struggle with reading, I don't often see them doing this, but we talk about it with our littles often, getting our mouth ready to read. And I don't catch it very much, but I caught it with Maddie this time. She actually got her mouth ready for the act of reading. So that's something I didn't teach her as a parent. That's something that a great teacher taught her to do. And so getting her mouth ready, there's a physical thing that she was ready to do, and it's a strategy. So if you caught it, awesome. Make a little note. All right, let's watch her.
Guide Dogs by Catherine Stewart. Chapter 1, What are guide dogs? Guide dogs are special dogs that can help people who cannot see.
All right, what'd you see her do?
Moved her hair.
Yes. All right. Now, we don't know if that's some sort of repeated behavior yet, but it's something to notice.
Guide dog helps people who cannot see.
All right. What do you see now? Let's go back to
She's looking at her.
Yeah. So her finger came down right as she started having trouble with some of the words, like guide dogs who cannot see. Oh, guide dogs who can't. She puts her finger down. So has some teacher taught her that? Yes. Somebody said use your finger. So with older kids, they hate using their finger, just as an aside. They think it's babyish, so please make bookmarks for the kids or have the kids make bookmarks, make a station where they make bookmarks, and then they can use their bookmarks. It solves a whole myriad of problems, especially with your strugglers.
Golden Retriever, German Shepherd, Golden Retriever. These are kinds of dogs.
What do you see?
Moved her hair again.
Yeah, we now have a pattern. So when is she moving her hair? When does she start to do this?
When she messes up or when she's struggling.
Yes, thank you. Yes, awesome, guys. Yeah, when she starts to struggle, she had the finger come down, but she's also doing this hair thing. So we'll see if that carries on.
These are special dogs. Daddy, I messed up.
All right, what does that tell us about her?
Her frustration level.
Yeah, she's feeling sort of frustrated right here. But if you notice, she also knows what? She knows that we're watching her. She's being recorded, and she doesn't want to be recorded when she's not doing a good job. Like, we worry as teachers, if they were to record us, that we wouldn't be doing we wouldn't be doing something right. She also knows she's being recorded. So the thing to recognize is it frustration because the words are hard, or is she so attached to the task that she keeps going? Because a truly frustrated kid will be like, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm done, or just stops. This particular example, she turns around and starts again.
Help blind people get around safely. Chapter 2. How are guide dogs trained? First, puppies live with their relatives for around 8 weeks. A doctor makes sure that they are not deaf or sick.
What did you notice her do?
She's tracking.
Yeah, she's totally tracking. She moved to the next page, but then she came back to finish. She noticed there was a sentence on the end or something that she hadn't done, so she goes back to it. So she's clear that she saw text in her face. She saw text in her eyes, but she hadn't read it, so she moves back. Excellent.
The mother dog takes care of her puppies. Guide dog puppies live with families that they can get used to all kinds of people. Next, puppies live with families for 1 year. Then the dogs go to guide dog school.
All right, what's that?
The look of accomplishment.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, she's like, remember a minute ago she was reading and it felt frustrating, like because she wanted it to look good. She noticed and was able to assess herself, her self-efficacy. She was able to self-assess, hey, I did a good job. And she looks to the person recording, me. She looks to recording to, okay, right? Like I did a good job, right? I did it. All right. So instead of, dang, I messed up, now she's like, yeah, this sounds pretty good. All right. So those are the things that when I'm sitting with the kid, I usually pay attention to. And she'll do this throughout the whole thing. So when you get a chance to practice again, you can definitely go and look for more physical things. Once a kid has done something twice, you have a pattern. With Maddie, you'll see her do her hair maybe 3 more times. As soon as she struggles, she does her hair and she brings her finger out. Okay. It's just something for us to recognize. Kids that shake their legs or that like chew on fingernails while they read, just little notes that you're going to make about the child. When a kid is doing their best self, they feel like they're at that independent level. They often don't do those things. So when they're reading well, you'll see some of the physical things slow down. Why might that be? Why is it that when I'm doing something well, I don't bite my fingernails, or I don't shake my leg as much, or I don't look away as often?
Because they're confident and they're not using strategies to help them.
Yeah, they're just able to get it, and it feels good. And so all of the stuff that's in their head slows down so that they're able to just pay attention. All right, so I had you get out the paper for Maddie here, and what I'm going to add, the Guide Dogs by Catherine Stewart paper. So now we're going to practice the Miscue system. So omissions, substitutions, you're going to delineate repetitions. They don't count against her, but you're going to do repetitions, self-corrections, anything that you see her doing. I say mark it. When you see her doing it more than once, you now have a pattern. So once that pattern emerges for you, you can then make an assertion. You can then say, hey, this is what the data says about Maddie. Maddie uses a lot of repetitions, or Maddie uses her hair as a way to calm her mind. So if you're seeing it happen, it's something that you want to mark. But right now, just the miscues. So don't worry about the physical stuff, just the miscues, all right? And I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to let it play, mark them all down. And then what I'd like you to do is, as we finish, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds or so to come up with 3 things that you can say are true about Madison based on the data. 3 things that are true about Madison based on the data. All right.
Are special dogs that can help people who cannot see. A guide dog helps people who cannot see. Labrador Retriever, German Shepherd, Golden Retriever. These are kinds of dogs make the best guide dogs. These are special dogs. Say
Professor Wilson, we can't hear it very well.
Oh,
Safely.
all right. Let me go in here. Let's see if I can open it differently for you guys. It is in your own, maybe that was what we should do. It is in your PowerPoint as well. I'm wondering if I can render it some way differently. How do I see? I guess what I can ask you to do is I will play it here, but I know why you're not, because you're going to hear it on my actual computer, not through the headset or anything. So what I would say is, can you go into your PowerPoint and open it? I'll go ahead and play it here, but if you can go into your own PowerPoint and play it through that, the link that's inside of the PowerPoint. Let me see if I can grab the link here. Can also stick it in those of you that are in chat. So there's the link in chat. And so if you'll click on the link, it'll open it for you, and then you can practice. It's 12:51 according to my computer right here. And I've got about 10 more minutes or so to work with you. So let me give you about 3 minutes or so to do the task, attempt the task, and then I'm going to need to go into the next part, okay? So attempt the task and come up with a couple things that you can say about Maddie. All right, so I'm just going to let this sit there, but go in and listen and do it on your own for a second. All right. If anybody has anything that they're sort of noticing about Madison, what is a noticing that is based on the data? You can write it in chat or talk out loud. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I see more repetition.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch. You can probably count at least 4, maybe even 5, 6. She does it a lot. And remember, anything that someone does a lot, even though that's not countable, it's probably going to affect her comprehension. So you don't have comprehension questions yet, which you would need. I'm going to tell you them in just a second. But you do notice that that's one thing that she does. Anything that a kid does a lot is probably going to cause an issue. Doesn't always, but quite often it does. What else do you notice about her?
She also self-corrects herself.
Yeah, she does. She self-corrects. That can be a good thing, right? But if it's too many times, it can be a bad thing too. I see some substitutions. Yes. If she's going to do something, she substitutes. Yeah, German Shepherd. Like German Shepherd. Yes, Maria, thank you. All right, so this is some of the things. Now, what we would then want to do is say, here's some of the things that we can say about Madison based on what she read. But right now, you don't know how she comprehended. You think you know because of the errors that she made, but you really don't know until we ask her the questions, which is the second part of the ORPS, the oral reading passage. So they read the passage, you do all the miscues, then you're going to ask them questions, all right? So for Madison, here's the questions that were asked. What I'd like for you to do is on the bottom of the paper is say, would you say that this is 100% correct? It's a check. She got it. It's great. Would you say that this is a wrong answer, an X? Nope, not right. Or is it sort of like yeah, she got part of it right, but part of it isn't, right? You can give her half. All right, so first question is, what is a guide dog? She says, a dog that helps blind people. What do you think?
Correct.
Yep. Sounds good. Why do guide dogs wear a harness? She says, because they might run away. Thoughts?
It's wrong.
It's wrong. Now, there's nothing in the passage that says that. Now, that might make sense for her own knowledge of a dog, right? Her dog at home might wear a harness, or she knows that, well, most dogs wear harnesses because they run away. That's not true here. So wrong. Could you have a guide dog? Could you own a guide dog? She says, yes, I love dogs. Thoughts?
It's wrong.
It's totally wrong. In the passage says that you can't because they're specialized dogs. They're for special people with special skills. All right, last one. What is a harness? She says it's a thing that goes around the dog to help it walk better, like it could walk with a blind person.
Half.
Yeah, I kind of felt half too. She kind of knows what it is, but she's also using her own knowledge to do it, which is what kids do a lot. We want to make sure that kids are using the passage, not their own knowledge, but you can't really tell which one it is. So I'd say probably a half as well. So when we think of Madison in terms of her comprehension, she has 4 questions, and you told me she missed 2.5. So how is she doing? Is she at 90%?
No.
No. She's maybe 50%. So then you would say, oh man, this actually didn't sound so bad, but her comprehension is a mess. Sometimes you'll see kids that have thousands of miscues. It's like every letter, every word. And then they answer all the questions correct. You keep going. The oral reading passages are all about comprehension. So you would mark down all of the miscues, but we're going to pay attention to the comprehension as our decision making if we keep going forward or not. And we're using this regardless of what you're going to see as we move into Jennings, which I'm about to show you. All right. So inside of Jennings, which you have, I'm talking about the big old document here. Inside of Jennings is what basically I'm going to be giving you. So what you're going to see is passages that look like this. Okay, this is the oral reading passage for level 1. There's always a background question or 2. Now, I'll tell you in Jennings, he and I have had many an actual physical discussion about this. I don't think he knows kids very well. He knows how to make assessments. He's an educational psychologist. But in terms of knowing kids, some of his questions are weird. So just be aware. Some of them are weird. They'll ask questions like, let's see, one question that's in here says, who is your special friend? Now, I don't know about you, but depending on the age of the kid, I don't want to ask him about special friends. I don't want CPS being called. So, just be careful. So this big Jennings PDF should be in Module 5. I'll check before I leave here. You don't need it for this exact minute, but I'll make sure it gets up there. And even though I know you've bought this expensive book or got the ebook and if I had to say something for you to keep up with, the assessments that we're using in here are worth a lot of money. So they are not things that I've asked you to buy, but this assessment would cost you close to $400 if I was to put it into your required readings. So put it on a jump drive, label it. It is something to keep. I know professors always say, keep this. You'll refer back to it. This is something that will make you look very good in your job. So when you start talking at interviews and saying that you've done IRIs and that you understand how to use running records and data, it'll be impressive, okay? All right, so background questions. Then you would ask the kid a prompt, and then down here on this part right here is where you would be putting all the miscue marks. So the kid would read, Ben was sad, he wants to go, and you would go, oh, wants. And you would then put once above it, and we would have a substitution, so you would count it. So this is where you would be putting all the miscues. After that, you would then ask the kids the questions. So here's the data that you're going to see. You're going to see the data that you just saw above. So all the miscues will be on here. And then the answers to their questions. And then down here, I'm going to ask you to fill out, did they answer the question correctly, partially correct, or not at all? And then to be able to look down here and figure this stuff out, okay? So you're going to see, here's the question. What did Ben want to do? Right here is the response to the question by the kid. What did the kid say? So the kid said he wanted to go to the park. And you'd see, he wanted to go to the park. Now down here, it's the answers. So all you got to do is say, okay, how close to the answer is this? And you would give it a plus or a half or a minus. You do not fill out the listening. The listening is only for when the kid is listening to you read the passage. So this would just be blank. So if you want to draw a squiggly line down it so you remember when you get the data, do not put anything in here. So you will be filling this part out. Whoops, I can't even highlight in here. You'll be filling all of this out saying, yes, did the kid get the question, kind of get the question, or not get the question?
Dr. Wilson,
Yes.
on this part with the comprehension, do you feel like it could be subjective?
I do think that it allows teachers some discretion in deciding, did the kid know it? But remember, you are looking to, is it what the passage says? Now, most of the time when kids get the question wrong, they can't answer it. So they say, I don't know. And that's what you would write here, I don't know. You'll even see me write that for you, I don't know. And it just means it's a minus. But yeah, it does require a little discretion. Kids will sometimes, in their own comprehension of it, say, oh, why did Ben's mom want him to move the chairs? Well, she was cleaning all around. So he was cleaning the floor. Well, that's really close. I mean, you have to decide. And I'd say, yeah, that's really close. It's a plus. And it's how we talk. Yeah, she's cleaning everything. So yeah, absolutely a little bit, sure. The background questions here have to do with these questions up here. Did the kid answer both of the questions? If they answered both the questions, you would give a plus. There was not a third question, you just leave it blank. The word accuracy, the number of errors, these are your substitutions, your omissions, and your substitution, omissions, and what's the other one? Substitutions, omissions, and what are the three
Insertions.
things? There you go, insertions, good. So that's what you're counting here. So if they had 2 of them, they're independent, 3 to 6 instructional, 7 or more frustrational, right? Comprehension here has to do with the questions. How many did they get right? You'd say 6, correct. So if they got 6 right, they're independent. In which case they should be moving forward. It should get harder. The rate and fluency, you'll see me crossing it out most of the time. When I ask kids, all right, get ready, set, go, it makes them want to run. So they start reading really fast. I don't believe in finding rate for children. I feel like for most of my career, when working with special needs kiddos, special disability kiddos, they find that hard to do when you're putting them in a situation that's like, do it now, and they're watching you time them. So when I take the timer away, or when I'm videotaping, especially, I get the time anyway because I'm videotaping or I'm audio taping. So it just doesn't feel like a get ready, set, go. All right, so that's what you would be doing here. If you have it because you recorded it, like on your phone, you would say, okay, well, it took 2 minutes and 10 seconds. But if you don't have, if you're not recording it, put an X through it. Do not make kids feel like it's a race. All right, last thing for today. Question analysis down here. Literal questions, meaning they're right there in the text. Inferential questions, meaning they have to infer something. It's more difficult for the kids because it's not directly there. It doesn't directly say why guide dogs have to wear a harness. So you have to kind of infer it, figure it out. You can find that out actually up here. If it says LIT, it is a literal question. If it says INF, it is an inferential question. So if the kid missed number 3 and missed number 4, they both said, I don't know. I don't know. Then come down here and you would say, oh, well, they missed, they didn't get 2 of them, right? 2 of the inferential, but they got 1 right. So they got 1 inferential question right out of the 3 that were asked. That's where you get this data. So I see that Laura's telling me she didn't see Jennings in there. I'm so sorry that the whole document is in there. It means I've given you the data, but not the document. I'm going to put a little note, and the document will literally be up there within the next hour. I also have to put up the extra video. It was rendering. This one will get rendered as well before I leave. Document Jennings. All right. So now you know this is what the oral passages are. Okay, this is what it is. It's an oral passage, so the kid would read this out loud, answer questions, read it out loud, and then they do not return to it. They have to try to remember it. That's part of the comprehension part. They would then be asked the questions. You would fill out the responses that the kid said. I'm giving you all of that. Your job is to fill out, is it correct based on the reading? And then to fill out this pieces down here. To find word accuracy, remember you got to go back here and you're looking for the miscues. To find comprehension, you're looking up here, right? How did the kid do right here? And then these literal and inferential, you're finding those right here on numbers 1 through 6. The second small video that I'm going to be putting up today at some point concerns how to take the individual insertions, substitutions, and omissions and find out what's going on with those, all right? That's going to use a Goodman's analysis chart. I'm going to make sure you have it, but it's sort of like a little extra for those of you that are in class. It's a little extra point value here. So I'm going to put up a video on how to make that extra point, and you can do that if you want to. It'll also give you some ideas for what to write concerning how to help Madison or how to help Zoe or Ruthie. I don't remember who all the data I gave you, Jacob or Jake. So it'll also help you to do that, but it'll be an extra credit point for you. All right, guys, so I'm about to lose some power here. So any questions that I can answer? Yes, Maria, I'm so sorry that it's not all up there now. It's usually in there, so I just assumed it had copied over. But I'm going to make sure that Jennings is up there for you. I'm going to make sure that the Goodman's chart, and you're going to have the video from today and another second video, which is already rendered, just kind of going over it again so you can practice it one more time. You guys are awesome, and I just want to say keep safe. I'm in Utah right now, but I'm watching numbers. My dad has cancer and my mom is sick. She has severe diabetes. And so it's been really tough on them with these 8,000 a day. The most important thing, guys, of all of this is that you can ask for help, but that you're also taking care of yourself and your family. It's a really scary thing. And I really, really need you guys to make sure that you're putting your family and our community first. And that you're walking around, and if you need masks, you let me know, because everywhere you are, it's about taking care of everybody else too, all right? I do care about you guys, and when there's a problem and you're not getting it or you're feeling really overwhelmed and confused, get ready. I'm about to give you my cell number in the chat. Here it is. Text me. Text me if you need anything. And not just for the pandemic that's happening, but if you're really confused and you only have a 1 hour to talk and you've got to figure this out, please text me, and then I can either give you a call or I'll text you back. You have my email. I'm there. I know I don't feel like I'm there all the time, but I am there. Stay safe, guys. I will talk to you soon.